All right, so I try and bring people up here from sort of all walks in the industry, like different parts of the process. Charlie here has been working for a very, very long time in this industry for other people. He has a lot of skills in construction and deal finding, and Charlie has just now put together his first two deals on his own, but he's put together a lot of deals for a lot of other people. So one of the things that I think is important is that while people are sort of moving their way up the food chain, if they choose to do that, you sort of get to hear their story, like and how they got here. And Charlie's story is really interesting, and I'm just really I'm grateful he was like brave enough to come up here, because I feel like some people when they don't feel like they have a decade-long career of making millions of dollars, they want to be in front of an audience. And Charlie's made a lot of other people money, and now he's making himself money. So please help me welcome Charlie Hustle Ortiz.
Thank you.
Okay, so I didn't get to brief you before and talk about what is off limits. Me and you have talked a lot about personal stuff.
Yes.
So if we ever get anything that's too personal, you can kind of just be like, nah. Okay. Tell me what's up, but I don't want to get too deep. So what I ask everybody at the beginning is how did you get into this field? How did you start just even taking interest in real estate?
I think, like many other people, I picked up a book, that Robert Kiyosaki book. I picked it up in 2009, and I was it just blew me away. After I finished reading it, I quickly turned around and I said, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do it in 5 years. It didn't happen in 5 years, but I already had that mindset of that I was just gonna do it. It was gonna happen. I didn't know it would take this long.
But it didn't. I mean, you were always working in the business. Like it took this long. Just this is the first time you did a deal for yourself specifically, right?
Yeah, I had a lot of practice runs. I definitely failed a lot of times. I definitely dropped a lot of deals. I did all the wrong stuff. But I think ultimately, when I joined the accelerator, that pushed me over the edge.
Okay.
I went from doing kind of like a door knocking acquisition to actually putting them under contract and going the whole way.
So one thing that I've been talking to Todd about, you can see actually in our real estate accelerator, and you can see in you, and I see it in a lot of people in this industry, is no one ever comes into their own until they take on a role of leadership. And so what's really weird, and I don't even know if you've noticed, but one thing I noticed is that when we got together and we talked about plans for door knocking, right? You brought in other people. You remember when you started coming to the club at the beginning and you were like, hi, I'm Charlie, whatever?
Yes.
And then after a while you were meeting people and you were like, oh, I'm Charlie, I'm doing all this stuff, and you should meet Steven because he says I'm great.
Oh yes, I remember that. I remember that.
So,
yes.
So you were taking on kind of a leadership position there, right?
Yes.
I want to go back at some point, but now bringing that up, can you sort of think about how you've moved into a leadership position over the last 6 months to a year?
Yeah, I think about almost a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, I came to you and Todd, and I was already door knocking, but I just didn't know, like many people out here that are sending letters or even door knocking or whatever it is that you're doing, you just can't convert all the way. You can't take the deal from talking to them to actually put it under contract. But you guys introduced me to a guy named Jim Keller. Jim Keller's out here.
He's over there.
Jim Keller, and that guy is awesome. You guys introduced me to Jim Keller, and I started working with him. And at first it was hard because I was chasing him around for a couple months.
Jim can be a little hard to get a hold of.
But once I did, I did everything that I could to bring Jim deals, because you have to bring something to the table. So I learned from Jim, and then I go out and take action, and then I come back. And then he'd say, okay, now do this or do that. So that played a big role in kind of shaping who I am now.
So how long did you work with Jim? I mean, not that you aren't now, but how long did you work with Jim doing that?
Probably a little bit over a year. a year and a half or so, I remember even about a year and a half ago when Jim was speaking, probably so about a year and a half ago or so, and I remember I was watching Jim up here,
Yeah.
and I was down there, and I was like, I want to be up here.
Yeah.
And so I just started surrounding myself with more people like Jim. There's a few other guys, Jeremy out here, and a few other movers and shakers that are the real deal. And my job was to build rapport and figure out how I can bring value to the table so they can, in turn, share the knowledge with me.
So are you willing to talk about your current game plan to like whatever degree? I'm asking you. You can sort of give a roundabout version of. Everybody's sort of afraid to like talk about how the Kool-Aid's made, but like give an idea of what at least your current strategy is vaguely.
Oh, my current strategy now?
Yeah.
So I worked at pre-foreclosures and notice a trustee sale. That's my main niche. I started off as a door knocker for Home Investors of America, just setting up appointments. And that was great because I was going to 25 houses a day, and Monday through Friday. And at the end of the month, I was going to like 400 or 500 houses, and I was talking to probably like 70 or so homeowners.
What was that process like? Like you just knocked on the door and said, "I'll have somebody call you," or what?
So my job was to just play it really dumb, like the dumb appointment setter, because I know that if I try to talk real estate, I was just gonna vomit everywhere. I was gonna throw up literally right there. So instead, I just made myself the dumb appointment setter. So when they asked me questions, I was like, "Oh yeah, we can get that answered." And I pull out my book. How does Tuesday or Thursday work? So everything revolved around setting up appointments.
What's your book? What book are you talking about?
Oh, it was just a planner that I have that's Monday through Friday, and that's how I set up appointments. That's how I was setting up appointments for investors. So I might open the book up, and all the days might be filled except Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I may say, how does Tuesday work or how does Thursday work? So everything revolved around just setting up appointment, because my job was to get the investor insight so I can listen to what he was saying, so I could start understanding real estate.
So you sat next to him, like you would
Yeah.
sit next to him and talk to him.
So I have bird dogs now that set up appointments, and their job is to set the appointment up only. So me and I work with Summer Flores also back there. She's an investor and she's also a licensed realtor. So it's their job to set the appointment so me and Summer can go in and talk to them about their situation, whether they want to keep the house or they want to sell the house. It's our job to give them options. Okay,
so you did that for a while, and then what made you jump ship from doing that, or what did you do next?
Well, since 2009, I basically wanted to go into construction and real estate, and that's what caused the collapse. And so everyone was telling me that I was crazy. I admit I'm a little bit crazy, and so I said I'm going to go for it. So I was basically just a handyman, just basically going under the radar and going from job to job to job to job to job. And sometimes there wasn't enough money, and sometimes I couldn't go home. I'd have to stay right there at the job if the house was vacant, or I'd stay in my car. But whatever needed to happen, I was going to make that happen at any cost.
So you were doing handyman work for a while. When did you were actually for a while still doing handyman work even recently. When did you kind of phase that out or stop doing that, or how's that work?
So as a handyman, you're allowed to make up to, per law, $500 per day. So I would go out and try to get 2 of those so I can make $1,000 a week, and then I can go out and do real estate. And so I'd hurry up and lock in 2 jobs so I could just make the bare minimum of $1,000, and then I'd hurry up and go knock on doors or whatever my strategy was. The pre-foreclosure is mostly what I was working.
Okay, so when you're in that transition period, because I got to see the tail end of it. So you were in the transition period from home investors, also doing construction. You're still door knocking.
Yes.
And then you were sending deals to Jim at some point.
I was working with Jim.
So what would happen? Like, there's this time period where you went from working for home investors to sort of working for yourself but trying to work with somebody else. What did that look like when you like door knocked and then brought Jim into it, or Terry or anybody brought in the deal with him?
So typically, I pull a list from Property Radar. I use Property Radar, so I pull a list, so I knew exactly where I was going to go for the whole week or for that month. So I try to plan out as much ahead as I can. So any free time that I had, I want to knock out those, fill in that gap. So in between jobs, I'd go to Paris. I was working a lot in Paris because I live in Temecula, so it's close to it's close enough to where I wanted to be. And I'd go to 20, 25 houses, and I'd set up these appointments, and then I'd have Jim and sometimes Terry, and they would come over.
So you're still being the dumb appointment setter?
Yes, I was still. Everyone should be the dumb appointment setter. Everyone should dumb it down, because I know that unless you've talked to thousands of sellers and you have a lot of experience, you probably will make it happen. But chances are you'll do what I did, was just vomit and throw up everywhere.
Well, that's actually what I want. I want to make really clear to people, like, you were the dumb appointment center
Yes.
in that case, and you played a character.
Yes.
Right? You played a character of the dumb appointment center.
Yes.
You didn't have to have all the answers when you knocked on somebody's door.
Yeah. And that was great about being a dumb appointment center. It's like, I'm just an appointment setter. That's it. If you want to know, let's set up an appointment. I'd go back and I'd open the book again.
So there's a step in between there, and I
Yes.
don't know what happened in
I'm
between.
going to tell you in between
Yeah.
that step.
Okay.
In between that step, so then I did almost a year for Home Investors of Knocking, but what I partnered up with another gal, so it was both of us. But for about an hour and a half or 2 hours, we'd meet up at a Starbucks between 8 and 10, and we would study, bankruptcies or loan modifications or keep your California home, HARP, HAMP, all the problems in real estate. And so by going out and setting up appointments and then having the investor come in and listen to what he was saying, I'd take a lot of notes, and I'd even ask if I'd ask my investor, hey, do you mind if I record it? I'd go back that night and I'd listen to what he was saying, and I'd take more notes, and then in the morning I'd go and I'd do more homework and figure out what it is that they're talking about, because I didn't know. Many of those equals a lot of experience.
So just being a good student.
Yeah, that's what it is. We're all students here. Even the seasoned investors.
Everybody is a student.
Everyone's a student,
Yeah.
and everyone should want to learn. And one of the biggest transition was when I cut TV out. It's like I divorced everyone, like my family and everyone, and it was just my bubble and only what I knew. And in my bubble was only going to be what I put into it. And so what I wanted to put into it was real estate and being around good people. Andy, TZ, just pinpointing all the movers and shakers and being around those people got me closer or faster to where I'm at now.
So you took control of what your input was so that you only got the results you wanted.
Yes, correct.
So I remember I sort of laughed to myself. So Charlie comes in my office, but then to the accelerator, and he's got this giant pile of papers, and they're all property profile sheets. If you don't know what that is, it's a sheet that tells you everything about a property, like who owns it, square footage, and there's notes on all over them. And I'm like, who are these people? And Charlie's like, oh, that's so-and-so, and she's got 2 cats, and the cats' names are this. And we talked about this for 3 hours in her house. And like Charlie was at our house for 3 hours. And he's got like a crazy amount of notes. And he's taking his giant blue macaws to these people's like houses he has on his shoulder, which is a really interesting way to sell. It's like this big mess of information, but you didn't have them in escrow.
Yeah.
So we talked, and you had all these leads. So what changed then? Because you had all these leads you didn't put in escrow. How'd you move forward?
Well, once you told me that you easily would have had 1 or 2 deals, I called Summer, and the next day we met up at Denny's. I'm like, hey, this guy says you'd have 1 if we called, so we started calling, and that's exactly what happened. Follow-up is the key. If you don't follow up, you're probably not going to get very many deals. That's like the very most important thing, and that's what I was lacking. So we quickly had a call for backup. Luckily, I hooked up with Summer here. She's got better organization skills than I do. And between both of us, actually, it's me and Summer, and it's probably about 5 bird dogs. So I have a team now, and that's what I did throughout the years is to build a team. So now, we meet like once a month. You've seen us there at the office, and all we do is practice just door knocking, not even talking real estate. I tell them, don't talk real estate, just set up the appointment.
So, Summer came in and helped organizing. What did, other than I'm sure Summer's following up because she's like the warm center of the universe when it comes to like she's like calm and you're like all over. How did that work? You had these pile of papers and you just started calling and then you just set appointments and she started booking them? Like, how did that work?
Well, we sat side by side and we started calling and Summer's like, oh, I got this. When I called, I was like, oh, I got this. And so
You both called?
Yeah, we both called and then we set up appointments, I think, for the next day or the following day. I think it was the next day.
So how were people? Like, some of these people you hadn't talked to in months. So how were they?
Some of these people I hadn't talked in, 8 months or even a year.
Yeah.
So there were, when someone's in trouble and they're desperate, they're going to want to talk to you. And that's the people that I'm really looking for. If you know what you're doing and you've been talking to the bank, and then, it seems like you already are taking charge of things. But if you haven't, then that's where we want to step in and start just getting in front of the sellers.
But I think that's really, I think the partnership there is really key. I couldn't do this business without Todd because I've literally not written contracts and just like thrown away $20,000 at a time because I just didn't feel like doing the paperwork that took me 10 minutes. So Todd sort of like crosses the T's and dots the I's, and I make a mess, and we both like have all these pieces where we sort of prop each other up. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like now you sort of have that where like you could sort of like in somewhere like sort of prop each other up with shortcomings, or maybe she's just sort of managing you and saying, Charlie, go do this, you're good at it?
No, actually we go back and forth. So if we're talking to a seller and they have equity, I'm going to do most of the talking just because she's licensed. If they're upside down, then Summer, since she's licensed, she's going to be able to talk to them a little bit more. So we kind of play the good cop, bad cop, and we go back and forth depending on the seller. Depending on, his moves will depend our moves.
Yeah.
And so that's, every situation is different. Sometimes it's like we'll go up to the high desert and, we won't start comping or even looking at the properties until we get in the car and we're literally on our way up there, and that's when we'll talk about it. So
you're still staying stupid all the way until you get there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what you're supposed to do. Like, and I mean that in a very serious term. Like, staying stupid is the best thing you can do in this business. Getting smart would destroy your business.
That's exactly right. I remember when I first started, I started door knocking and I had started doing the property radar with Jim, and I really thought for some reason that I knew it. I really did. But I think the biggest lesson that I learned was a deal that me and Jim were doing, the Jenny. And that deal.
I remember that one.
That deal was going to make a big wholesale fee. And I was all excited, and I did all the wrong things. And I went from, I was going to make a $50,000 wholesale fee to making nothing. And the funny thing is, when I met her, when I first door knocked her, she was crying. And at the very end, when I was at her house, then Jim got there, and then when we left, me and Jim were crying.
Oh man!
And that was a lesson that was a big experience. It was a big wake-up call. It was the first time I was talking to banks.
Because Jim will call in the house. Mm-hmm. Jim will call, like, he'll dial the bank in front of the homeowner, and so you're sitting there listening to Jim talk to the bank.
No, that was the first time I was actually.
Okay, you were calling. Don't tap your mic.
That was the first time I was actually talking to the banks and going through all the motions.
Okay.
And so that's where most of my learning was on that job site.
So it was like pressure, like right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it was like sink or swim.
Mm-hmm. It was. And I think after that experience, we couldn't save our house, and it was almost like the Matrix, like time slowed down and everything was just slow, and it was just like we lost this lady's house, and I'm still going home broke. And at that point is when it started to dawn on me that I was just being a selfish a-hole. And that was kind of the turning point where I started thinking what would be in the best interest for the sellers, and started being so selfish, you know.
Okay. So you feel like your overall attitude towards the seller changed.
Yeah, once I started figuring out a way to help them instead of really trying to buy their property, like let's see if we can really save your house, right? Instead of me trying to figure out a way how to buy their house. If they want to keep their house, well, by golly, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make every effort.
Which is basically what you do now, is you do
Yes.
everything you can to try and save their house.
Yeah, the name of my company is a homeowner resource group, and that's what we want to do. At the very end, if we've done everything and we've called the bank and we've helped them fill out paperwork, and at the very end they say we can't keep the house. Can you help me sell it? I'll say sure. We don't even have to really talk about it because we built so much rapport that I know she's going to ask me to sell the house.
Yeah, either you're going to buy it or list it
Yes.
or whatever the case may be. And so with Summer, you have both.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to reach out to another person.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I want to go back towards the beginning again. So people always want to know what the juicy gossip is and how you're doing the deal. But so you talked about having like sort of kick your family and everybody out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your extended family or whatever. What was to whatever degree you want to disclose, what was your experience with like your family and their feeling about you doing real estate and that kind of thing? Were they supportive in any way, and were they like?
See, the thing is, I don't really care too much about what people think, so it made it easier for me because when I had decided, I was just decided, and nothing was going to veer me from that path. It was like, it was like a magnet that's just pushing you. And so I did mention it to them, but it's like it came in one ear and out the other because I was just so focused and so determined, and everything revolved around this thing that we call real estate.
Well, the reason I ask is, I was this way, Todd was this way, and a lot of people we know are this way. We grew up in homes where like our parents just paid for everything we wanted to do. You know what I mean? The stories you tell me, like sleeping in your car, like basically being nearly homeless, like those things are you didn't have any support. It was I don't want to say it was all you, because everybody has people helping them along the way, but you're like the American dream. Like you are actually the American dream. Anybody can make it in this country. And so I think that's like, I'm totally not trying to make you cry.
Oh no,
that's not the goal. But like that's
just making me sweat.
But that's a big deal. It's like I want to bring that up because if people are like, oh, what's his thing? But I don't feel like you have anything that helped you get there.
There's nothing special other than I just decided to take action. That's really it. But there was a point where between like 2011 to almost 2013, where I was kind of like a general contractor. It was me and a few other guys, and we were helping some guy from Fortune Builders. He was flipping property, and so there wasn't enough money, but there was the experience there. Mm-hmm. So the job wasn't going to pay much. I lived for like about 5 months out in Palm Springs and the Rancho Mirage because I could only go home on the weekends. So I sacrificed, my relationship and my house and everything. And at night I'd really just zoom in because when we were doing these houses, they were all bare bones.
Yeah.
So I was always picturing what it would feel like to do it only as an investor, just to add like many more zeros behind that paycheck.
Yeah.
And so that's what really drove me is like seeing that future vision. That's what kept me going. And even when the times were tough, there was a time that it was really, really, really tough where I was doing a job in La Jolla and the contractor was like, oh, we won't pay for 2 more weeks. And I didn't even have money. I didn't have no money. And so my buddy worked at like at Albertsons. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, oh, I'm gonna help you out. I said, awesome. And so he went out and he put food in the back of Albertsons.
Are you
some
serious?
pastries.
Like left your box?
Yeah, he put some pastries out. And I was grateful. I was thinking it was gonna be money, but it was just some pastries. I'm like, $5 would have, helped. And that night, I stayed in my car, and I remember the San Diego Police Department rolled up, and they were checking the cars. And he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm sleeping. Look, I said, I'm an entrepreneur, and I own a house, and I don't have a choice. This is exactly what I have to do. And if you tell me to leave, I'm just gonna go right down the road and I'm gonna go to sleep just to go to work the next day. And I said, that's my deal. And he was just kind of like scratching his head. And he was like, oh, okay. And he gave me back my license and he took off. And so those were really hard situations where now that I'm having success in real estate, it's just like, there's no excitement. It's just like, I'm just happy to just be making some money, and it's made me really humble. It's really changed my life.
One of the things that really impresses me about you is, so you'll meander into my office, you'll say, hey, I have this thing real quick. And he's like hiding behind the door. He's like, can I come in? I'm like, come on. And the reason I always take a meeting with Charlie is because when he walks in, he has a notepad and he has a pen in his hand and he says, okay, real quick. And he says the question and he writes down the answer. He says the question, he writes down the answer. And he goes to 2 or 5 or whatever, and then he leaves and he never asks me the same question again, ever, because he wrote down the answer. And I feel like you're a phenomenal student that way. But people get there, like there's a point where people, like there's these evolutions, people get in their career, right? They sort of grow up a little bit. You spend a lot of time by yourself.
Yes.
Like completely alone.
Yes.
In your car, on the job
Yes.
site, whatever it was. What was that like? How mentally taxing? What was that like to be? Because I've spent some serious time alone, and it can be brutal. Like it can be. It's like a reality check. You can't.
Yes.
You have to be honest with yourself.
I climbed a lot of mountains, swam a lot of oceans. I sweated. I cried a lot. I prayed a lot, and ultimately, when you're going through all these hardships, and if you can find something positive in it, I think that's where that transition is.
Yeah.
Right, because I could be living like in Mexico or some other third world country, but instead I have everything here. We have everything, but we make all these excuses of why we don't want to do it. I spent a lot of time doing all these affirmations to kind of paint this picture so I can wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do the things, the 20% that's going to start generating me leads. And that just happened through a lot of repetitions. That happened because I got to know who I am, what I stand for, my work ethics, my values. I think a lot of people that don't know who they are, don't know what they stand for, are going to fail at this business miserably. Right? It shows when you're talking to people. Mm-hmm. This game is really about you, right? Ultimately, and I think the more at ease, the more cool, calm, and collective you are, I think the more deals that you're gonna get, and that's something that I had to learn. Even when I started, I was always trying to pull one out. You know, I was like, hey, Steven, can we meet today? And I was always like trying to convince you until one day you're like, hey, listen, I'm not a seller that's behind on payments.
Yeah. Don't be hustling me with your stupid bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm not falling for it. If you need to make an appointment, set it with Sonia.
Yes. So that kind of nonsense mentality kind of helped me push forward. And even today, I still am struggling with it. And every day I'm trying to get better. We talk about being a student. I'm still a student whether I'm here or whether I'm out there doing real estate or construction. I'm always a student. And so my job is to let everyone know what I do, everyone that I come into contact, no matter what. Everyone should be like a human marketer. If I'm standing in line and we're not talking, I should be talking to them. Everyone should be talking to everyone. And that's how I'm picking up more deals, and through my construction guys, and just through other outlets. It's funny. I had mentioned to you, it's like I'm starting to see more deals, and you said no, they've always been there.
Yeah,
those deals were always there. You're just starting to recognize them.
Yeah.
And so
now they're like abundant. They become like they're everywhere.
yeah, now they're just coming. They're coming out of like the woodworks.
No, they're there. They're always creeping.
Where were you 3 years ago when I needed you?
When you weren't ready for it.
When I was broke.
So we talked a lot about, okay, so Charlie got 2 houses at once, and the guy has like 7 more to sell and wants to sell them all. He's a really nice guy.
Yes.
Very nice guy. And he's perfectly happy to sell them at a discount, so they're not his problem. I met him at the escrow offices because I happened to be there at the same time. Good dude. And he does, apparently, so he doesn't tell anybody, but he does a ton of charity work.
Yes.
All his travel he does is all charity.
Yeah,
yeah, really.
It was a joke between Todd. It was like every time that Mr. DeVell, every time we were going to go into escrow, he'd take off out of state or something.
You got to close fast. I'm leaving. We're like, yeah, right. He was really leaving every time. But we talked about what that conversation was like because you met with him. First of all, how did you find him?
You know, we found him through some bandit signs, through some of my bird dogs.
Okay.
But here's what I really want to emphasize. I don't think it was just the signs. I think it was the energy that our whole group put together. When you're in a group effort, there's something about the group that
it's like a tribe.
where you want to perform a little bit better. And so you're going to do much better when you're in a group. And that's what has been working for us, that kind of whole group effort where we're all meeting, we're all stick together. I think that's what's generating the houses.
Do you think there's some accountability there?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things, like, guys are under somewhere. So Guy was in a meeting, the accelerator, I think I talked about before, where he had a seller he had to call. Like, and he volunteered to call in front of the whole audience.
Yes.
You were there, right?
No, I wasn't there that day.
That day. So he calls, and like, same thing. I was like, I wonder how much better this is going, because there's all these people staring at him going, better not screw it up. Like, you better say all like the right stuff, because then you perform a little better. So, he calls off, Mr. DeVille calls off a bandit sign, and he calls one of your bird dogs, and your bird dogs calls you. How'd that process go?
So he called the bird dog, and he calls me. He's like, I think this guy's really serious. You know, he tells me he's got this house, and you know, he has all these problems. And I said, okay, I'll go ahead and give him a call. So we give him a call, and we set it up for the next day. And so me and Summer, we head on out there, and we go to the first house, and we started talking about construction. I said, he reminds me of one of my buddies who's just like him. He's 80 years old, and you know, he's got like 20 houses in Temecula, and he has 5 houses on my street, and that's how I know him.
Okay.
So I already knew what type of landlord he was because of my buddy.
Yeah.
And so I started kind of talking to him like I would with my buddy, and it turns out that they're they wake up really early in the morning and they work on their houses. So they're one of those guys that like to work on their houses. The problem was, so we start talking about the first house, and we start talking about construction, and we start talking about numbers. And I asked him what he was looking to sell, and so I think the first offer I came in, I think it was like at 120, and then I said, I want to put a little bit more in there just in case of tenants. Okay. So then I brought it to 115,000. Okay. And he's kind of a sophisticated buyer because he's got a lot of rentals, and so he already knew kind of what he wanted to sell the house for. So he said, hey, that's great. I would have took 112. Okay. So I was like, okay, great. So then.
I mean, sweet.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, in that case, can we go down another 3,000?
How about $110 then?
So we ended up actually shaking hands on that deal.
Just the one house?
Yeah. So we shook hands and we said, okay. And then I said, hey, how about we just jot this on paper and then we both sign it? Yeah. And he said, okay, great. So then Summer got it on a piece of paper and then she wrote it out. By the way, I learned that from Andy Teasley.
Yeah, write it on a piece of paper? Yeah. Yeah, it's all you need is a notepad.
So that's what we did. We just wrote it on a piece of paper. We wrote out terms, the escrow, and I think that was pretty much it.
It's pretty basic.
And we signed it, and that was it. And then he said, I have this other house. And I said, oh, really? And he said, it's just across the street. He said, you want to go look at it? I said, sure. So we went to the second house, and that house is the reason why he wanted to sell in the first place. He had some tenants. He has owned the house since like 1978, and he put some renters in it for $500. Oh my God. So for like the last 20 years, these renters have been paying only $500.
Is that the one that you're currently working on, or the one that's next?
No, the one that's in the front.
the one that's next.
Yes.
Okay.
And so they were actually the renters were actually running amok, and the county kept coming back and citing the property because there was a lot of drug activity.
There were a bunch of like crackheads in the shed.
Yeah, there was.
Right?
You know, I didn't tell you this, but
of course. Can I have some money? I didn't tell you this.
yeah. So I didn't tell you this. This when I came to get the not cash for keys, but for
The couple $100 for the
the
people?
150.
Yeah.
Here's what I didn't tell you guys. I went back there and they were still back there, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on? You were supposed to be out yesterday. Let's talk about it. Let's see what's going on." First of all, he's got a swastika on his hand right here.
Wow.
And then he's got another tattoo coming across here, and he's just tatted down everywhere. And so I said, "Look, we're gonna talk." And so we started talking. He's like, "I need $40, to move my stuff." And I said, "Okay, let's go back and see what else needs to be moved." And they had built some unpermitted structures, and it was nighttime, and so I had gone with a couple of my bird dogs. And so it was like a garage, and there was almost like a dummy wall that I didn't see when I first went in because they had a sheet. So anyways, the second time I came over, the sheet kind of fell off, and there was like 10 people hopped up on meth, and they were just running around everywhere, and I was like, okay, you guys are cool, I'm cool, we're all gonna be cool, okay? We're gonna figure this out.
You're like, cool like Fonzie, cool like Fonzie.
And so I know what they really wanted probably was just some money so they could buy drugs. So I said you need $40, I'm gonna get $50, and I'm gonna get $100 for you guys to do whatever you wanna do with the $100, whatever it is.
Charlie could have just said, "Hey, we gotta buy these guys drugs and leave." I would have gave you the money.
And so I got them to. I said, "Okay, what we're gonna do is everyone's gonna pack up some stuff, and we're gonna move to the front. I'm gonna go down to the office, grab a check, and then come back." And then that ended up working out. But it was really tense because it was just like you open a door and there was like cockroaches running everywhere. And
so was it like that when you went and visited the property with Mr. DeVille the first time?
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore.
Okay.
It's really they enclosed a carport, so it's got 3 citations. It has a carport that they built to live in space, so that's the first one. And then they built a patio and actually enclosed the meter.
Yeah.
So they can't even get to it. So that's the citation number 2. And then they got like 2 big structures that it's unpermitted that they built.
The back ones.
Yeah. So I mean, they had like a whole football team back there.
So when you went there and walked the place, did you go back? Like, where did you do a contract with Mr. DeVille for the second one?
We went back there, and he was like, he said, "This one's gonna need a lot of work," and I was like, "You don't say." And he's like, "This is the real reason why I want to get rid of it." He's like, "I don't know any architects. I don't know any structural engineers, and the county is behind me. And although he knows about construction, it's more like a handyman construction.
Yeah.
He wouldn't know how to convert that or who to even contact. He was having a problem contacting architects. Well, you don't even need an architect. Even a draftsman can.
Yeah.
Or even a general contractor can draw it up.
Sure.
And so that was his real motivation. And so that's where I started irritating that motivation a little bit more,
Okay.
and then quickly came up with a solution, which was money.
So did you go back somewhere else to talk about it, or how did you drop a deal on that one?
After we walked it, we went there to the front, and it was just really good energy. When I'm buying houses, it's all on rapport. Most of the time, it's not about the price. You may think it's about the price, but it's really not. If they feel comfortable with you and they've seen you, more than 8 times, you're just about to buy the house. You might not know it, but you're really close to buying the house. And so that's my game is to build a lot of rapport and figure out why, and keep the conversation mostly on them, and then at the same time ask the questions that I need to ask, so I can start coming up with some numbers. So we went to the front and we started doing some more numbers. And I said, well, that one we got for 115, but this one's going to be a lot more extensive. And I said I'm gonna come in with a lower number and see if he goes for that. So I said, how does $80,000? How does that? What did you have in mind? How does that $80,000? He's like, I'll take it. I was like, awesome. Let's shake again real quick.
That was it?
And yeah, that was it. And we shook, and we were just talking about more construction. And then Summer was writing out the contracts while we were talking, and it was based on report. He wanted to sell them, but he wanted someone that he felt like he could trust.
Yeah.
And since I have a lot of construction experience, it was easy for me to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah.
and talk to him about that. So that one went pretty smooth. He's got a couple more properties. As a matter of fact, about a month ago, on a Monday, we showed up early in the morning, and he showed up, and there was all the construction guys, and he was really happy with what was going on.
He's ecstatic. Like, he's so happy.
So he's got some more houses. I'm going to be calling him probably next week and showing him what we've been doing. Another thing that I'm planning to do is go down to the county and talk to them about giving me some bags, some paint, so I can go and clean up the neighborhood, since I'm going to be selling a couple of houses there.
Yeah.
And also I got 2 more hot leads in that area where I'm trying to pick up 2 more houses on that block.
Just talking to neighbors, right?
Yeah, I just went out and I was like, hey, listen, I just bought this house here and the one across the street, and the reason I'm contacted you, if the guys are too loud, just here's my card. I want you to let me know. And that's kind of my in to start talking to them.
Yeah.
Indirectly start talking to them. And, all I did is knock on their house and, ask them if, when it came down to it, if they were interested in selling, because I would buy. And I already had proof there because I was already in one. And so she was like, yeah, I want to buy. I want to sell. Awesome. You know where you want to go to? And then, so I painted that picture. So once she said that she wanted to sell, I didn't say, well, how much? I said, well, where do you want to go to? And what I did is I painted that picture and got her excited where her destination, where she was going to be moving to.
Didn't she say like a mobile home park in Hemet or something?
No, she wants to go to Paris.
Paris, that's okay.
Yeah, she wants to go to Paris, and so I started painting that picture. I said, hey, that's awesome. There's a lot of infrastructure going in there.
Yeah.
I think prices, they're going to drive the prices because everyone wants to live close to work. And it was just like, it was like awesome. And so then I talked to her. I've been talking to her again because she was ready to go, and then it kind of like was fizzling out. Mm-hmm. So then I just go and just have a conversation, not talking about the house, and just
hang out.
Yeah, just say, hey, how was your week today? Or just about anything.
Yeah.
And but I got 2 that are going to be coming when they've decided. I want to be right next to when they've decided.
Yeah, I literally just got a call from 2 years ago. It says, hey, you still want to buy this place? Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Talk to you soon, Bob. Mm-hmm. Got to go like put an offer together thing. They'll come back after 6 months, a year, whatever.
I just got a text the other day. I had sent out all these like small little index cards, and I just put the stamp right on it, and I put the message. So they're not opening up any envelopes. They get it, they see it. I want them to read it before they toss it. And so a guy was like, hey, listen, he sent me a text message, and he's like, hey, I'm not interested in selling my house, but I'd like to take you out for lunch.
Sweet.
And I was like, that's what I said. Awesome. Great. Where would you like to go? And so even though he's telling me that he doesn't want to sell his house, I wouldn't call and say, hey, listen, I don't want to sell my car, but would you like to go out to lunch? And so it's just my job to listen to what he has to say, and just keep following up with him, because in my eyes, everyone's a seller. Every single house is a seller to me.
Just how much and when.
Yeah, it's just when you're ready. But everyone, if you think about it, in every neighborhood, people are getting divorced. So I'm already at 60%, because I know 60% of the people, I'm already at half, because 60% of people are getting divorced.
Yeah.
and we know people are dying in those neighborhoods. So now I have probate, death, and then people are behind on payments. So I got death, divorce, and default. So if you take a small little area, which I've been farming, those little areas, you're gonna find that people need to sell their house because they're getting divorced. And you are already at a 50% advantage because 50% of this country is getting divorced.
I actually like that philosophy a
Yeah.
lot. So, okay. So, the sales, these two houses, right? The sales prices are what?
Um,
I should ask Summer what she wants to sell for.
Yeah, I think we had it conservative at 240, but one of the houses down the road sold for 270.
So we have a 220 and a 240 estimate
Yes.
based on the size, and both could go for over 250 depending on the neighborhood.
Yes.
And then how much is the rehab on both of them?
On that one was 27,000, and on the other ones I think it's going to be about 50,000.
Okay.
With
The unpermitted addition. So we're looking like 400 and maybe $500,000 in sales price with $300,000 in cost.
Wait.
So, I don't know if you've done the math, but like those houses together are going to make over 100 grand.
Oh yes.
Net.
Yes.
Like
yes.
in just two houses.
Yes. Correct.
From just being like a nice guy to some guy who wants to sell his house.
Yes. You make it sound so simple. Like so many years, she's like, oh, so just signing some paper. The first house that I'm in, I bought that one for $115,000, $27,000 in repair, and I think it will sell for about $250,
We'll see. Yeah.
$240.
There's nothing for sale under 250 in most of the Inland Empire, so it's just a matter of demand. And the other one's a little bigger.
Yeah, the other house is a little bit bigger, but I bought that one cheaper. I bought that one at $80,000, $50,000 in repairs, and the ARV is I think it's going to be about the same, somewhere between 220 to 240. And if we get lucky, then that's awesome.
Yeah, they'll do really well. So we're going to run short on time. If anybody wants to ask questions, you can ask a question. I'll repeat the question for the camera and for Charlie if you can't hear it. And Charlie will answer. Does anybody have any questions for Charlie? Anyone? Anyone in the back? Ginny? So you're asking about internet? She wants to know if you do any social media or internet marketing in any way.
Not too much. I mean, I got a little bit of presence online, but not too much. I try to do what works for me. I think everyone should find their niche, and whatever works, you should do much more of that. And then when you get good at that, then you should implement other strategies. So I just try to stick to just door knocking, because instead of going on the internet or sending out mail, which sometimes I still do, I like going directly to the source, directly going face to face, and start building that rapport right away from day one.
Any
Yes,
other
sir.
questions?
Sean, you're knocking on every door in that area. You just went to specific houses that you thought of private area.
So he wants to know if you're knocking on every door in the area or just certain houses for any reason.
So I'm mostly targeting houses that are pre-foreclosure and houses that have a trustee sale date or that are going down to the county. So I target those houses. But recently I've started implementing farm areas where I take an area, like in Bloomington, that house, I drew up a map, and it's basically a farm of like around 1,000 houses, 1,000 to 1,200. And from those, we start scrubbing the list and figuring out which houses we really want to target. So, but initially, I'm having my guys go to every single house, because say we run into a renter, right, and they want to buy, well, then my bird dog can still make a fee if we get Summer to list the house. So there's still going to be money to be made, maybe not as much. And our name starts to get known in that farm area, so they know, hey, Charlie buys houses. Just like a good realtor, I want to be the good investor in that farm area. So to answer your question, we just started going to every single house.
Anybody else? Okay.
So when you go knock on their door, what's the first thing that you tell people, or you ask, or what do you say?
So she wants to know when Charlie knocks on the door, what's the first thing that he asks or says?
You know, I tell them who I am and why I'm there. I think those are the two most important things. Everyone should you should be telling the sellers who you are and why you're there. I tell them, my name is Charlie and I'm from the Homeowner Resource Program. And typically I already have their information. I have the property profile. So the next thing I'm saying is, were you aware that you have a pre-foreclosure date of, 7/15/2017? And they're gonna say yes or no or whatnot. And then I just go into, I go into as if they wanna keep their house, right? I assume that they wanna keep their house. So I'm going in that direction. What have you done? Well, I've talked to the bank. I'm doing a loan modification, I'm doing bankruptcy. And so my next question, what I'll say is, it's great, I'm glad to hear that. If that doesn't work, what's your next goal? So what I want to do is start opening them up. You see, so I go in with kind of a warm, and then I start leading into a little bit more questions. I ask them for permission. I ask them for permission to ask them questions. Am I saying that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Would it be okay if I asked
Yeah.
you this?
So I start getting them to say yes a lot. I start warming them up. So the longer I'm there, the more I'm warming them up, and the more rapport I build, and the easier it is for us to really take it from outside maybe to an appointment, or sometimes they're ready and we'll go directly into their dining room and they'll bring their mortgage papers, secondary paperwork, and we'll sit down and we'll start talking there and then.
So in the end, so in the long run, in the end, you also try to offer them options, so within the conversation that you have with them.
Yeah, so that's my purpose of the Homeowner Resource Program, is to give them all the options. Like there's nothing sneaky when it really boils down and they can't keep the house. I mean, I'm gonna tell them how much their house is worth, and if I'm gonna be assigning the contract, or if I'm gonna be wholesaling it, I'm gonna make sure to let them know, hey, I'm gonna be making $10,000 or $12,000 or whatever the number is. I need you to be aware of that, because this is a service that I'm providing, right? It's like they're gonna be trading some of their equity for my service, right? And so I'm very transparent with them on everything that's going on. Yeah.
So your job essentially is to educate people, be a resource, and then when their options run out, you're the resource they're going to go to, because you've helped them, you've given them something for nothing.
Yes, correct. So let's say that they are going to lose a house, and they have nowhere to go. I still have resources in Paris. You met the gal. Where we can still house them and still feed them for like the next 2 or 3 months. So there are real resources outside of real estate. Or if
You know where like food banks are,
Yes.
and churches, and like all the other resources of people
yes,
who lost their homes.
I have all those resources. Sometimes I'm going into real tough situations. Like we were at the high desert, and we were talking to this gal for like an hour and a half, and she finally, I was like, I told her, I feel like there's something that you're not telling me. And I said, so I work with people in death and default and divorce every day. Like, this is what I do. And she finally told me, and she was like, well, my husband tried to kill himself on my birthday. And I was like, oh, I see what you're asking. If he kills himself, what will happen with the house?
Yeah.
I see I said, the house will go to you. And if you don't want the house, then I'll go ahead and buy it from you. And so they're really tough situations. A lot of times, kids will be involved. People are going to prison. They're terrible. So you have to have thick skin, and you also have to be empathetic, and you have to be able to guide them also. Literally, it's like I'm taking your hand, and I'm, pushing you along till we get to where we need to. Because if they could have done it, they would have done it a long time ago.
So it's like that one on Diodore, the
Oh, yeah.
the crackhead lady with the kids in the room, and there's a bunch of crackheads in the garage.
Yes.
So Charlie and I tried to buy the same home. By the way, the brother stepped in on that deal, and now the brother who didn't want anything with the house is contesting the sale to
Oh.
probate. It's gotten really nasty. So Charlie and I tried to buy the same home, but like a month apart. We were already working with this lady, and man, the house is like there had to be 10 crackheads in there,
Yes.
and then there were babies, and then there were like kids, and we're like, oh my God, there's a bunch of kids in this house. These people are doing drugs.
I signed the contract in the garage with the people running around.
Dude, the picture you took there is just like that should be framed. There's like crackheads in the background with Charlie taking a picture of himself like signing a contract. It was like it's the weirdest picture you'll ever see. He showed me and he's like, look, and I was like, oh my God, that's so weird. It was awesome though.
Yeah, you'll find that people are homeless with their home. Like if you're not out there every day, you're just missing out. If you could just take even 1 or 2 hours out of your day to go out and talk to people, you would gain so much knowledge just by doing that alone. Because you'll find out that people are homeless within their home. There's no electricity,
Yep.
there's no water. I mean, there's all these problems, and they really do need help. They really do.
Any other questions?
Are you finding many of the people, two questions, find many of the people are just doing bury their head in the sand, it's not gonna happen, I don't wanna talk about it? And then the second question with that is, you coming across a lot of people in that situation in the past have been known to, I'm hiding from the banks, I'm hiding from my creditors, I'm hiding from anyone, I'm not answering the door. You see a lot of that?
So the question is, are people burying their head in the sands, and are the people hiding from banks, creditors, anyone else they need to hide from?
Yeah, all the time. As a matter of fact, I got a deal probably a couple weeks ago that I'm working out with Jeremy. Actually, we're still working on it now. But I had my bird dog. He was like, he kept going back and back, and finally set up an appointment. We went there, and I don't think she was ready to talk, or she wasn't there, or she didn't show up. So I told my bird dog, just keep going. The more she sees your face, she'd rather go with someone that she's seen 8 times rather than someone she's never seen before. So just as the fact that you're showing up, his face was already familiar. And so finally, she answered, and finally, what really woke her up is she had a trustee sale date. And so now she was ready to go. And it was only because he stayed consistent, kept going back and back. And she owes like she only owes $42,000, so there's like a ton of equity in that house. I have to jump through a lot of loops because, she was married for 4 months, then she was murdered, and
She
now.
was murdered?
Yeah, she was murdered.
Wait, hold on. How are you talking to her if she was murdered?
I'm talking to the daughter.
Okay, I'm like super confused. I'm like, she's married, she's murdered.
Sorry, sometimes I'm not clear.
I was like, okay. The daughter's mother was married for 4 months and murdered. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not clear. The mother was murdered, and
Yeah. I was wondering who was signing.
the mother was married for 4 months, and then she was murdered. And now the daughter's still living in the state, so it's a daughter and her brother and the ex-husband.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more complicated. But so to answer your question, we just keep going back and back and back because, like I said, if they could do it, they would, but they're scared. And it's just what you said. Sometimes when we show up, they think we're the bank, or they don't know who we are. So I always try and leave them with some type of information that can help them with a loan mod or BK or something that's tangible. And we just keep going back.
Any other questions? Let's go, Randy.
Right here. It's right here. As a matter of fact, I would love if everyone here was a bird dog for me.
So Randy, by the way, I didn't get to repeat the question. Randy was asking how Charlie finds his bird dogs to join his team.
It's here. What a better place than to go into a room where people are excited to learn real estate. I mean, it's right here.
But you do something very specific. You say, do you want to go out with me? Do you want to go bird dog with me? Or you want to go door knock with me?
So yeah, so before I used to take out a lot of people, and we used to go out door knocking. But what I started doing recently is the people that want to go out and do do door knocking or they want to get involved, what I'm simply asking is, for the next 30 days, I want to know what days you're available. So I want you to get a calendar for the next 30 days, and I want to know the days you're available. So if you're available on Saturday for 5 hours, and you're available on Tuesday and Wednesday for another 10 hours, I want to know what days you're available, and at the end of the month, I want you to tally up those hours, and I want you to commit to those hours, and then I want you to sign it, and then I want you to send it over to me. That way, I know that you're really serious. And the guys that get it into me like within an hour, I'm like, those guys are serious.
Yeah.
So I started spending time with them, and I take them out door knocking, and I give them access to my property radar, which I paid for. That was like $600 or $700. So any information I got, I pass it on to those guys. I moved into an office like a couple months ago in Temecula. So I'm looking to buy more houses in northern San Diego, which is Escondido and Oceanside. And it is the same thing that I'm doing here. It's the same concept that I'll be doing over there. It's no different. It's just being able to, and really you don't even have to manage the bird dogs. They already want to do it. So I make it where it's going to be all about you, and I want to teach you as much as I possibly can, so one day you can go out and do the same thing for yourself.
What you got, Andy?
Two questions. What do you wear when you're out talking to these folks?
Yes, sir.
The second question, a lot of my head.
What was the second question?
What was the second question?
Come back to me about that.
He lost it. So first question, what do you wear?
Typically, I wear a blue shirt today. I just happen to wear red, but typically it's just a blue shirt. Sometimes I wear jeans, or sometimes I wear some slacks. And sometimes, depending on the area I'm going, I'll do funky things, like I won't wear a belt, or I have my shirt tucked out, or something weird about me. Something is a little off. I don't want to be the guy that shows up in a suit, and I want to be the guy that can relate to them. I want to be relatable.
So you just being yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
What day is the best day to go out? Have you experienced any days that were better than others?
I like Sundays. I like to go Sundays because I know I'm going to catch a lot of people home. But typically, Monday through Friday, if they're home, those are the people that I'm targeting. If they're not home, they're more than likely they're at work. So I want to go out, Tuesday through Friday, between the hours of like 10 to 4 o'clock, and see who's home.
So you don't have a job, so you're at home.
Yeah, you don't have a job, you got laid off, something's going on, I want to talk to you.
Got anybody? Purple?
This is my favorite Bigger Pockets podcast question. The question is, what advice would you give to new investors that give up or never get started?
Sorry, Isaac, I could barely see you with the light back there. I'm all purple. So Isaac wants to know what advice you'd give to people who never get started.
That never get started?
Give
Yeah.
up.
They just give up.
They give up? This is here's what I would recommend. In this room here, there's movers and shakers in here. I would try and identify some of those movers and shakers and build rapport with them. Even just being around them. Even if you can take Andy Teasley out for lunch, or Steven or Jim, or any of these guys here, or Jeremy. Take them out and just get started. Do something. Do something today that will get you further tomorrow. But do something. Anything, but do something.
Yeah, I guess I would add to that the pain of remaining the same has to be, if the pain of remaining the same is not greater than what was it? I'm losing it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Right, while I'm on stage, I forget. The pain of remaining the same is not as great as the pain of changing, so you won't change. The pain of remaining the same has to be more painful. So until it's more painful to remain the same, you won't do anything. That's how people are.
If you're uncomfortable, then nothing's gonna happen. You have to seriously be really uncomfortable. I've been so uncomfortable that I've been alone that I've cried. I've cried. I'm like, I'm just gonna let it out. And you just got to go through those motions. If you don't, nothing's ever gonna happen. You're gonna be going to the same place, doing the same thing, and
Ginny? So she wants to know where to find the phone number for sellers you can't get a hold of.
I have a partner that's got Skip Trace. I know there's other programs, but I just, I'll go to Mike, and which, if we have here's what I recommend, and I'm just gonna start doing this. I'm just gonna start implementing this. If it's an abandoned house, what I'm gonna start doing is taking a picture in front of the house with me in front of the house, and then sending them that picture with me in front of the house at that vacant property and saying, did you know? And then just send it off. Because they're gonna call and say, did I know what? And I'm gonna say, did you know a house like this caused squatters to come in here and destroy the property? And so it's more like a guerrilla marketing. But I just want the phone ring. Whether they're gonna yell or whether they wanna sell me the house, I just need the phone to ring.
The other advice I'd give is talk to all the neighbors that can see that house. One of the neighbors probably knew the people who used to live there. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. Well, usually if you talk to enough neighbors, like for example, so today we're in front of our house. Me and Cassandra are moving, and one of the neighbors came out to talk to me. Now, unfortunately, I had to be the one to tell her that the owner of my property died, and she had known him since he was a little kid. But I had never asked for Randy, that's the owner's name, Randy's phone number, but she would call him all the time. Be like, hey, we want to make sure we get good people in this house. Don't rent to people with 20 kids because there's a bunch of senior citizens around here that don't want a bunch of kids running amok in the street, right? And all I probably had to do, I had to actually drove out to this guy's property in Fountain Valley to meet him, but all I probably had to do is go knock on her door and say, hey, Dee, you got the number for Randy? And she'd be like, yeah, you want me to call him? But I just never went next door. In my own house. So just go talk to the neighbors. Because she had known him since he was a kid. And he inherited the house. So even like a property that had been years past, multiple owners and heirs, the neighbors still have the phone number to get a hold of the right person.
The key is just getting out there. I mean, even if you don't know, just go knock on the house and tell them that you work for a group of investors, and just hit every single house. I guarantee you that there's going to be someone that needs to sell their house.
Yep.
But you won't know because you won't go out there and take the action. That's the problem. No one takes the action. I'm the dumb one that's going to go out there and take the action. I'm going to be dumb all day.
Love it. Any other questions before we wrap? Good. All right, well, give Charlie a round of applause. Thank you for being here.